And what you're sharing is so crystal, but I've seen it obviously with who my parents are, and I try to break it down. Sometimes it's frustrating because, like
Yes.
what you said, it's many things to operate with like such a limited budget to execute the success. It's almost like you're in a, as you know, in slang term, you're in a trick bag already. So
Right, right, right.
it's almost like you have to be perfect. But
And our
which
measuring stick is different, Carly.
yeah
Let's just be honest.
yeah
Our measuring stick is different. You know, the makeup and the chemistry of our space is different, and so we understand that, but we also know that others are watching. You know,
yes
everybody wasn't happy. We got 1.2 billion for
no
COVID dollars. So what were we doing that other districts weren't? We were giving hazard pay, right?
yeah
So we were actually giving incentives for people to come to work. Our students were shifted and thrown into this virtual learning when they didn't have devices. So we had this amazing campaign led by Reverend Dr. Wendell Anthony and DTE and Rocket, and they came together and said, what do we need to do to make sure that all of the students have a laptop? So that was a space that we operated in. And then we still had things to do with, COVID mitigation,
yeah.
you know, mask and,
I mean,
temperature check, that whole space too.
smart boards ended up in every classroom.
Every classroom had a smart board. Absolutely.
Even that capacity.
Transportation, feeding
Yeah.
millions of people.
Yeah.
So we weren't sitting around waiting on things to happen. We were making things happen. But I will tell you, the gray that I have in my hair, I'm sure is from that. That was the most difficult time because I do not think that there was one decision that we made and took lightly. Not one.
And with that, like as everything is transitioning, we don't know where things stand, and students are getting back in school. I just spoke to the at the teachers meeting at Northwestern. It was unique because it's like, wow, I haven't seen some of these rooms.
They're
I got to go
excited
inside
too.
a
We're
room.
excited. Mhm.
It, even the social work capacity. Where is the mental state? Not just with the students, but the administrators and the teachers. Like, where are they led a breathing exercise to start
Calm
everything.
classroom.
Where what resources are being given there, and what support can be given from the community.
So I think, and thank you for lifting that up because that was another thing we did with COVID dollars, this mental, and I call it mental well-being, right? Because there's this stigma with mental health. Oh, I don't need mental, right? So this mental well-being space. But what people have to understand is we were all in COVID. Teachers were in COVID, board members were in COVID, superintendent was like, we were all in COVID. We lost people, we got sick ourselves, our students, they lost family members, and yet people were just expected to just turn that off and just come and perform or come and work. And so what we realized is that, there's always been this space of needing some mental support. That's not new. But it manifested itself in ways beyond our imagination during COVID. I've never been in a pandemic, and I hear people talk about, Spanish flu and all. I wasn't alive, right? You weren't alive, right? So
grip ago.
We were not. We've never experienced a pandemic, so no one could really say all you have to do is, even though that was a comment that we heard, all y'all have to do is. And I think that people didn't understand the magnitude of the decisions that we were making at that time. And so, one thing that I would hope is that as we turn this corner, COVID dollars dry up in 2024.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things that we were doing, we are taking a look at what was working, where we're going to have to restructure this budget to make sure that continues to happen.
Yeah.
All of these literacy programs around Let's Read and doing this Orton Gillingham's literacy interjection, I would say, an intervention for literacy, identifying some gaps and getting young people to the scale where they need to be and beyond, growing grade levels beyond where they need to be. All of this, there's volunteer work that can happen. Volunteer work where you're saying, you know what, I don't have any kids in the district. You do. You have almost 50,000, as we all do. As people, what if people said that when we were growing up? What if they said, well, I'm not an educator. My kids are grown. I'm not going to take my time and go into the schools and do something. It could be as minute as allowing a teacher to have their lunch by themselves instead of having to work and do their lunch or have their lunch with their students, right? Maybe you are doing lunchroom duty. Maybe you're doing recess duty. Maybe you're coming in and reading to kids.
Yeah.
What are you doing? You know, I've been in schools all week. Backpacks, helping with backpacks, you know, helping parents find resources through our parent academy that they need to help them be rock star parents, right? No parent wants to think that they are not being the best parent. And I refuse to believe that parents are comfortable not being a good parent, right?
Yeah.
But how about we take you to the next level in your parenthood? I've been a parent for 23 years, and there's still something I can learn now with grown children. Like, what does that look like? What does it look like with my 4-year-old niece who's at my house and her 11-year-old sister and her 13-year-old brother? So, you know, one thing that's disheartening is to hear people say, well, you don't have kids in the district anymore. I have almost 50,000 kids in the district.
That's deep. That's deep. So with that, as we get to a close, and man, I'm gonna have to get you back.
We need a part two. We need
I
a
know,
part
we
two.
definitely gonna have to
Okay.
get you back because there's so many more questions that I have.
Yes.
And we're breaking it down, but I'm glad you were able to share this. What are some of the before we get to the classic Detroit is different questions? What are what's something this fall that for a person watching, whether they're a parent or not a parent, that they could connect with? What would you say? You said like different things. You said like hall monitor. I remember that Clyde Cleveland was a staunch
Oh, yes.
he was a staunch Northwestern hall monitor. I was like, oh yeah, you can't skip down that hallway. Better go up the steps. You know. So like, how do you what do you suggest for that? And then even making sure that because it is a process depending upon what type of engagement
Volunteer
and
you're gonna be,
volunteerism
absolutely.
you need, because definitely we're checking people's information.
That's
We don't need
right.
no creepy stuff going on. You know what I'm
That's
saying?
right.
So what would you suggest for most? Like, how would that start? How, if I'm in the community, how do I even engage to figure it out?
Yeah, so for those who are tech savvy, they can go to the website and there's a volunteer page there. And so you can sign up and go through, like you said, there are certain tiers of volunteerism based on if you're going to be one-on-one with the student or not, right? So, and then you would get a badge with a color to let people know what type of volunteer you've been cleared to do. But sometimes it's as simple as just going to the school and talking to the principal. What help do you need? You know, a lot of times people complicate it, and it doesn't have to be that complicated. Volunteers are in the schools often. And I ran into one the other day at Thurkel. And she was a very active parent. And she said, you know, Miss Angelique, I was at the school so much. I work at the school now. And so she's working at the school now, but she was that type of engaged parent. I've seen grandparents do it. Lunchroom duty is a huge gap for us right now. So we just need people to be on lunchroom duty to make sure, you know, that there's civility happening during lunchtime with our young people. And that's a paid position. So you don't even have to volunteer. You can apply and work and do that. Might be favorable to work a couple hours out of the school day, right? You're only working a couple of hours and you're only working a couple of months out of the year. So there's an opportunity for people to come in and do that. And then recess. You know, we do have recess, another one of those things that was taken out of the school district under emergency management, which it just baffles me to think that a K-5 student would not need time throughout the day to exert all of this energy buildup that they have. So now where does it manifest? It manifests in the classroom and they can't sit still, right? So, but volunteers for that. I volunteer and do recess duty. You're just making sure nobody's hurting themselves, you know, making sure kids are just having good, genuine fun without, you know, any challenges in that space. So, you know, you don't have to be an educator to come in and volunteer. We just need your time.
That's unique. We had back at Hallie Magna Middle School. We had
Oh,
Mr.
Hallie,
Williams.
yes.
He'd always be like, hot dog. 'Cause we needed volunteers because, you know, we'd be like opening chocolate milk, slide them down. It was like, end up at the principal's office for doing something stupid. It's like, yeah, we know. He'd look at us and he'd be like,
right.
Oh, this is
Give
weird.
you the eye, right?
I was
See,
about
we
to do
need
something
those
stupid,
people.
Mr.
Yes,
Williams.
Mr. Williams.
I was ready. It was like this chocolate milk was ready to just go in Omari's face. And it's like, Mr. Williams, stop me.
And we know kids will be kids, right?
Mhm.
So, the innocent fun that they
Mhm.
think is fun, that we have to just make
Mhm.
sure that there's some parameters around it. But lunchroom duty is a fun time because kids are catching up with their friends and
Yeah.
they're talking, and now that we don't have the mask mandate, that's a barrier too that for some people, and so it's optional. Let me just say
Mhm.
that. So if you desire to wear a mask, you can still do that. But we have followed and stayed aligned with the CDC. And
Mhm.
so the CDC, there's no more contract tracing. They aren't testing, people anymore. I work at Ford, and we've removed all of that. The 4 questions you have to ask before you come in, those are gone. Wearing a mask, that's gone. Temperature checks, all of that's gone. And I know that's a private sector, but there's no public sector where that level of mitigation is in place. Now, if we get into a month into the
If
school
things
year and it
change,
changed,
you
we
follow the
have the
CDC
equipment already,
guidelines.
right?
Yeah.
We follow the
Mhm.
CDC guidelines. This is not a board or superintendent decision that we made collectively based on the advice from the CDC.